Our next speaker will be Brad Tonnessen with his presentation on science, community, and seed at NMSU Jose Fernandez Garden. Thank you.
All right, hello everybody. Let me share the screen here. Okay, so thank you for all of you who organized this conference and for inviting me here. And also Richard, great talk, thanks. So today I'm going to be talking about the Jose Fernandez Garden at NMSU that I was a part of the past couple of years. You'll see I'm at Colorado State University now, but I'm going to tell you a little story about everything we did in this vegetable trial garden at NMSU. And honestly, it was really nice to go through all these old pictures and yeah, relive those memories. And so I'll get started. So Jose Fernandez, so this was created from an endowment from the family of Jose Fernandez, which was a prominent farmer in the valley. And so what we did with this endowment is started up a vegetable trial garden. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go through the whole story. So what we did is first found a nice 2/3 acre plot that was in alfalfa. And it's right here on the NMSU campus near the cotton ginning lab if you ever want to check it out. But the first thing we did in the winter of 2019 was to plant some rye as a cover crop before we turned it into this trial garden. And the first bit, we wanted to change it from flood irrigation, which it was in alfalfa for a while, into drip irrigation. Since we're trying to conserve water, it's the best way to demonstrate that. And so first we were plotting out main lines, digging ditches, getting all of these in here. And here's an image of our main lines and our header lines being installed. And we did 6 different sections, each of them with 8 rows. And they're all controlled separately. So we knew we were going to grow a bunch of different vegetables. And so we wanted to have them all controlled separately in case we wanted to do different watering regimes for different plants. And so here's another image of that. And we also wired it all up. So it's all electronically controlled. And once we put it in and shaped the beds, so we were doing 40-inch beds raised, and we started growing things. So these are some images of the first year of 2020, which was a tumultuous time to try to grow a lot of veggies, but we managed. And so you'll see we tried some purple leaf corn. The center is artichokes and cardoon. And then you'll see on the right side, that's Sesbania, which is a legume cover crop. So here it is, the Jose Fernandez Memorial Garden. That logo there was created by our own graduate student, Francesca Ortega. And the goal of this garden is to perform vegetable variety trials on more unusual, underutilized types of veggies, and also to promote seed saving, climate adapted vegetable growing, and public engagement. And we did have an Instagram, I think it's still going. You can check it out there. So there was a variety of vegetables grown in that field. And here's a list of most of them that we were working on. So for the spring, you'll see some maybe you're not familiar with, such as Orach, which I'll talk about, Celtus, tatsoi, so a few like brassica greens and lettuces. Celtus is actually in the lettuce family, just bred for a nice succulent stem that you eat instead of the leaves. And in the summer, Naranjilla, you might not recognize that. That's in the tomato, the solanaceous family from South America. It's more of a sweeter orange fruit. It had a long season and we were always struggling to get it to work, but it was fun to try. And bitter melon, so that's more of a food from Asia. We tried it here, etc. But I'll get into that a little more. And so we really, we did a small farm approach where we were growing something throughout the year. Like if you're on a production mixed vegetable farm, this is what you do. We also did some other ones like native flowers and cover crops, which I'll talk about, and of course, lots of weeds to deal with. So this is, I just wanted to show this because we were keeping track of our crop rotations throughout all of these sections. So on the left side, you'll see these 6 different sections. So those were the all the different valves, right? And then our 48 rows controlled by these 6 separate valves. And first, like I said, we planted rye at the beginning. And through 2020 and 2021, this is what we were doing. So we were trying to cover crop in between our plantings and also trying to keep, you know, as we did this, 2 to 3 years in between planting the same crop in the same area. And this is how I managed to keep track of it. So into the variety trials, I won't talk too much on everything we've done, but I thought I wanted to highlight a couple of the ones we did. And this first one is Orach. So Orach is in the family of spinach. And it's really great in the hot weather. I think we harvested into this almost the beginning of summer. And it was still tasting great and buttery. So honestly, if you're looking for an alternative to spinach that does well in the garden in southern New Mexico, this is great. We tried 4 different varieties of Orach, and those are shown here. So golden, most of them just looked a little yellow, but that's its natural color, and on the green side too. And then 3 different more purple or red varieties. But interestingly, there's a lot of genetic variation in those. So what you're seeing is some green leaves and some red leaves, and that's just because, you know, it's not necessarily stable for that phenotype, which we noticed. And we did some measurements on these. We looked at the kilograms of leaves harvested. So just like you might harvest spinach, leaf by leaf. And then we measured how much we harvested, and we did 2 harvests. So April, especially like I said, not really the beginning of summer, but into April, did 2 harvests 2 weeks apart. And honestly, we could have done more, but we were pressed for time, etc. But it was really productive, and the one most productive was our golden Orach. So the one that wasn't red colored. So there might be something about that, but also what we did is looked at the health of all of these cultivars. So this was assessed right before harvest, and what you'll see are the different cultivars here, and then we did a rating of size and vigor, and the golden Orach definitely won out of that, but there were close runner-ups in triple purple. And also phenotypic variation. So like the different coloration and everything, we saw a lot of that in some of these more red varieties, but not this golden one. And also, if we're talking about pests and insects feeding on these plants or even diseases, we didn't see a lot of that really in any of the varieties. So this looks like a hardy type of vegetable to grow here. We also did tastings, and number 1 was triple purple, number 2 golden. So we could say that golden Orach and triple purple Orach are probably the best performers for this garden here. Now I'll get into a different trial we did, which was with some carrots, and we grew those in the fall and winter of 2020. So we did 4 different hybrid carrot varieties, which are shown here, all different colors and shapes. So it was a lot of fun to grow these. We also grew a couple other root vegetables. So salsify and scorzonera. So these are interesting. If you haven't heard of them, I didn't hear about them until we started growing them. But they are really a sweet root. They almost taste like coconut, honestly. And they grow really well. They weren't necessarily as big as they were shown in the catalog, but I think some improvements in soil structure and how we water and when we plant, I'm sure could improve the size of these. But we did similar measurements, you know, weight, size for these root veggies. And when you compare the carrots, you'll see that we had deep purple F1, which was this long purple variety here, was the best yielder. And one of the reasons for that is percent marketable roots. So more of them were producing nice big carrots. What we also saw is if you look down here, we were looking at stand thickness. So we seeded them all at the same rate, and we really just watched them and let them come up. We didn't reseed or anything. So whatever didn't germinate, we just left bare. And we saw that some were suffering with germination and coming to maturity, such as Hercules, that orange carrot. But deep purple did the best in terms of just filling in the bed. And that really could have been the reason why. But that's also a good indicator of something that would work for the region. And also we did some measurements on parsnips. I didn't have a picture of that, but these are sort of compared in a separate way from the carrots since they are such different root veggies. But the salsify was really the good one here. So if you're interested in something that's almost like coconut and you can grow here, try that out. So that was a quick overview of some of the variety trials we were doing, but we do a lot of other activities at the Jose Fernandez Garden. Sustainable agriculture activities, such as cover cropping. We planted native flowers to attract pollinators and beneficial insects, soil solarization to cut down on the weed pressure. So we were growing all of this in an organic fashion. So we were applying chicken manure and not spraying pesticides. And so we had to do our best to deal with the pests. And we also wanted to give a harsh environment for the testing or the trialing of which vegetables could really stand the natural forces in the area. We also got some interesting pictures here I wanted to show. We were having some secondary consumers out here in the garden, such as a toad, nicely camouflaged here. This is our cucumber rows, so trellised up and just looking beautiful. That is Armenian cucumber, so that does really well here too, if you're looking for a cucumber to grow. And also my very high-tech way of planting cover crops. An old Planet Junior honestly works the best. So with cover crops, we did a few things on the JFG. And first, as I said, the rye over the winter before we started everything. We also tried Suspania, and in those sections, it is a legume, it does fix nitrogen. We did see an increase in soil nitrogen. So Suspania worked really well, and it makes a lot of biomass. So if you're trying to increase organic matter, go for that. We also did a lot of Austrian winter pea and barley mixture, and we did it in two different ways. So in these pictures, you'll see here on the left, I actually left the beds intact, and we used our drip lines with a 4-inch spacing. So it actually really just covered the whole bed, so we could plant a cover crop across the whole raised bed. And so I tried it that way, and then we also had a larger section, like 6 sections, almost half the field. We converted back into a flood system. So we set up the berms and planted using a seed drill for Austrian winter pea and barley. Worked pretty well. But what I'd like to say is that with using flood and doing it at that scale, turning it under and moving the earth to situate all that, you really got like a lot of the stuff that was almost 2 feet underneath the soil up to the surface. So a lot of the soil structure is damaged when you have to do something like this. Whereas if you plant right in your beds, the topsoil is actually preserved right there, and you can do some minimum tillage just to incorporate that cover crop, and you still have your beds, you know, with a tiller and a bed shaper to plant in it right away. So this on the left seemed to be the best solution for us. And so we planted a lot of native perennial flowers. The purpose of this, of course, to attract beneficial insects such as pollinators and also predators of pests. So we planted a variety, 8 total, and this was all from the help of Miranda Kirsten, which is talking after me. But what we did is we set up 2 rows of flowers on the west and east end of the field. which is shown here in this diagram. And the reason why it's gridded out like this is because we did replicated complete blocks of each set of flowers. And in doing so, we actually set up the possibility of doing entomological studies or observational studies in the future, because we have this repetition spaced throughout the field. So we did it just for in the future, if anyone wanted to look at these flowers in a scientific way, it was ready for them to do so. And here you'll see this picture of an artichoke flower. Those bees were liking that too as well. Now we also did some soil solarization. So as I said, you know, especially when you're in an organic setting, we weren't certified organic, but we were working towards it. And it's hard to hoe an entire field, especially when you don't have a lot of time to do so. So solarization is great in that way. It takes care of the weeds. It superheats that top part of the soil and kills whatever seeds are there. It also doesn't necessarily kill the microbiome. They might suffer in that topsoil, but right after you take the plastic away, those communities recover pretty quickly. But essentially we lay out this clear plastic. It's 2 mil plastic if you're interested. And we laid some sandbags over it, and you'll see this condensation, and it heats to well over 110 degrees in there, which is what you're shooting for to kill the weed seeds. And as a really nice example, so this is taking off the plastic, and then after a few really big rain events. So what we do is we put down the plastic right in midsummer, so around June. And there's not a lot of rains happening in southern New Mexico at that time, so it's perfect. So there's not a lot of water getting on our plastic. And then we take it off right as the rains are about to hit in July. And this is showing you on the left, there were some trials growing, and then we kind of let it go. So there's a lot of weeds. On the right is what was solarized, and we didn't do anything to this. This is after rain and no germination of weed seeds on that right side. So I thought this was a really nice example. Now, on to the next piece. So community with the Jose Fernandez Garden. So Alexa helped us out a lot with this. And this was to set up a produce distribution program. And so what we wanted to do was get consumer preference data for these different varieties. But at the same time, how do we do that? And we thought, well, if we give it away for free, and then we just ask for surveys in return, that would be a good system. So we advertised it. We had a lot of people sign up. We had to turn a lot of people away. But essentially what we do is like a CSA style, community supported agriculture style, and we'd give away these veggies and give them information and then electronic surveys to fill out and return to us about how they liked each variety. It worked out really well. We also got some pictures from people of so this is actually celtuce, like I was talking about, the stem of a specially bred lettuce. And they made some dips, put it in a salad. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun doing these distribution events, meeting people. It's nice to bring the community in that way for our science. And finally, we did a lot of seed saving at this garden. And why is that important? Well, it moves our crops forward, right? Continuous evolution for local environment adaptation. Also to preserve landrace and heirlooms, and have these local adaptations for your farm particularly. So if it's in a special environment, seed saving on your farm is really important. You can also create more unique foods, and you're a little more self-reliant in terms of buying your seeds. And you can create some new interesting varieties. So for example, on the JFG, we had a farmer collaboration as part of another Western SARE project. But he was looking for a head lettuce that would last more into the summer without bolting, because as it bolts, it gets bitter and no one wants to eat that. So what we did is we said, okay, well, we're going to try these different varieties at the JFG in Las Cruces. And this farmer was located in Albuquerque. So we figured, well, if we're here in this hotter environment, we'll find something that's really hardy for you up there. And we measured quality and bolting resistance. And so we made this plan where the first year we're going to trial varieties at the Jose Fernandez Garden. And we planted it relatively late in the spring, and then we measured yield, size, taste. But then we also left half of the plots to assess bolting. So early bolting plants were noted and then rogued because we were going to save the seed from them. So we didn't want to save seed from things that would bolt early. And then we did this measurement of first bolting date and then 50% bolting date. Year 2, we were going to continue that on his farm. So here's some data here. These are the varieties we did at the JFG. And what you'll see here is total weight, and then we did the size. And then we looked at first bolting date and when 50% of the stand had bolted. And we have this earliest and latest for all the plots. So we saw that these two varieties here were the latest bolters. So quote unquote, most heat tolerant. And we also found that some of the ones that were yielding the best weren't necessarily as tolerant to the heat, which was too bad. But we came up with this, interesting, and moving forward with that. Here's a little image of our seed saving of the high quality varieties. So with lettuce, you have to let it bolt and it grows into this large structure and the flowers on top, and you have to trellis it because it does tend to fall over. But lettuce does self, so you can just grow them out and collect the seed from it. Don't worry about cross-pollination as long as they're not right next to each other. Another seed saving endeavor we were into was summer squash. So we got this from a farmer, Felipe Mena, in southern New Mexico, and he had these interesting varieties of squash, and we planted them out, and there was so much variation. So what you see down here, all these different types of squash were all from this seed set. It was really interesting, and once we saw that, we wanted to start selfing them and collecting seed from these. What we were also looking for is seeing what could be resistant to that all terrible squash bug. And maybe planting late in the season would help deter the squash bug from getting in to these plants. We saw variable success in that. Really the concept is that the squash bug would find some other cucurbit plant to attack instead of this one. So we selfed the best squash plants that we found. And with squash, if you're not aware, they are imperfect flowers, which is they're separate male and female. And so how you do this is you pretty much take the pollen from a male flower, rub it on the female flower, and then close it up so no other insects can get in. So squash need insects to be pollinated. So what we do when we self them is we need to keep insects from getting in. And that's how we do it. So here in the bottom right corner is a female flower that's been pollinated, selfed by a male flower, which is here on the right, on the left, and then closed up. So then with the fruit that develops from that is going to be self seed just from that squash. So we continued this onward, and here's just some more images. Here in the E, F through I.
You have 5 minutes left.
Phenotypes. And yep, we're getting to 5 minutes left, so I'll hurry through this. But this was the next year grow out, and we got some really interesting things. And honestly, I think the coolest one was that some plants are creating a white zucchini. Moving forward with that, I think would be really fun. But some of them are just all over the place. Another seed saving project we did was with okra. So okra does really well here. Honestly, any variety, it seems like, does well. But what we did is checked at emergence. And so there were a couple of these varieties that just didn't do well in terms of emerging. And that could have been because of water availability. But if you're in this hot region and the soil's drying fast, you're going to want something that can take that. So Jing Orange, Carmine Splendor did really well. And then in terms of total yield, yield per plant, Carmine Splendor just took it along with Jing Orange. We also saved seed from them, and we were growing them out this year too. And that data is pending, but it'll be interesting to see as we save seed over the years, if we're getting improved yields because of adaptation to the environment. All right, so here I am at the end. Wanted to plug NMSU Vegetable Extension and the Instagram and the website. So for this is news and events for Western SARE. You can get involved there. And yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank all of these people that were involved in the project, undergraduates, graduate students, Stephanie Walker. Can't thank you enough for supporting me in this endeavor. And also, I guess I'll plug where I am in my new place, which is at the Organic Agriculture Research Station at Rogers Mesa, up here in Hotchkiss, Colorado, on the western slope. And if you want to contact me, here's my email. All right. So any questions?
Okay, thank you for that. Now it's time for questions and a reminder to fill out the post-presentation questions that should pop up right now. Okay, so the first question is, how did you make your raised beds? Did you incorporate anything into them besides soil?
Yes, actually, yeah, I didn't mention that, but so the raised beds are made by a bed shaper. We have a tractor implement for that. We incorporated compost as well as pelletized chicken manure. So the compost came from a local producer in Deming, and the chicken manure also from, well, a company here in New Mexico. And so the chicken manure, we were trying for a rate of 8 tons per acre, and the compost was variable with availability.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, how long did you leave the solarization plastic on the field?
So typically we did 2 to 3 weeks in peak summer. So right around the solstice was ideal.
Okay, perfect. And the last question is, in the rows you solarized, did you have a cover crop planted prior or was it fallow? I'm curious if the solarization can effectively terminate both weed seeds and spring cover crops.
Well, for us, usually we were solarizing so essentially how our rotation worked was our spring planting of greens or brassicas. We would take those out and then put the solarization tarp on. I'm sure if you put a solarization tarp on a cover crop, you would end up killing it. So yeah, you could absolutely do that.
Okay, thank you. That was our last question, and thank you for that talk, Brad.
Yeah, thanks, Alexa.
Nice to see you again.